ready? Let's go. Yeah. For those of you that want to know what we're all about, it's like this, y'all. This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name.
Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, there are three fundamental ideals that the SSN Youth Conference believes in. The empowerment of women, the empowerment of the youth, and taking democracy to the villages. Now what the BJP and Narendra Modi have... Okay, wait a second. Damn it, that is Youth Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly sorry. Now, the inaugural edition of the SYCon of the SSN Youth Conference took place this time last year, during E-Week of 2014. Last year, for the inaugural edition, we had an outstanding list of extraordinarily talented speakers, and the event was a massive hit. This year, for SYCon 2014, we have amazing food. Thank you. I worked on that all night yesterday. Before we begin, before we move on to your first address of the day, we have a couple of announcements. The college buses leaving today will not leave till 4:30 until the program is completely over. So you guys don't have to worry about missing your buses at all. Lunch will take place at 12:30. Okay, so for our first speaker of the day, Mr. Anil Srinivasan is an accomplished Western classical pianist who was awarded the coveted Sangeet Natak Akademi Ustad Bismillah Puraskar in 2010 for creative and experimental music. His various collaborative works with several of India's top musicians, both Hindustani and Carnatic, have come in for critical acclaim. These include Mandolin Shrinivas, Chitravina Ravikiran, Aruna Sairam, Unikrishnan, Rakesh Chaurashya, Lalgudi Krishnan, Gaurav Mazumdar, Jayanti Kumaresh, and others. He is best known for collaboration with Sikil Gurucharan, with whom he has produced 10 highly popular albums. His recent work has also included highly acclaimed collaborative concerts with veteran S.P. Balasubramaniam and others from the film fraternity, including singers Karthik, Saindavi, Shweta Mohan, and Anuradha Sriram. His active involvement in music has seen him deliver nearly 500 performances both in India and abroad. He has been a TED India speaker, chaired conferences on music, in venues as diverse as the Liverpool Hope University and the University of Mumbai, and has represented the country across multiple forums involving arts education. Mr. Anil holds an MBA and an M Phil from Columbia University. As an entrepreneur, he is the founder of the hugely successful Rhapsody Music Education Initiative to take the classical arts through structured, systematic syllabi delivered through schools using a combination of physical classroom learning and online support that reaches out to nearly 75,000 children across Tamil Nadu. Recently, he has taken on the task of curriculum development and teacher training for music in the classroom alongside the Corporation of Chennai for schools across the city and at a larger level in state-run schools in Tamil Nadu. Interestingly, he is an adjunct faculty at Mumbai's prestigious S.V. Jain Institute of Management and Research. Mr. Anil Srinivasan has in his journey struck all the right chords to make him a truly exceptional individual and hence the perfect candidate to deliver the inaugural address of SYCon 2014. So, sir, stage is yours.
So here's what I was just telling your volunteers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by playing music because that's more interesting than speaking. If you like what I play, you'll have to promise me that you're going to move at least one row forward. Okay? If you don't like what I play, you can stay where you're seated. Unfortunately, I can't allow you to go. Okay? So let's start with something. Unfortunately, I was listening to this in my car stereo on the way here, so I think you guys kind of know this. One row forward. Clearly, some people want me to work even harder, so I'll the great thing about listening to FM and listening to today's devices is that we keep listening to music all the time. So I'll play one more until you settle down, a little bit more in front. This is slightly before your time, but still. Okay, so I don't know where the clock is, but I'll try to. It's there already? Oh, you've already started timing me. Okay. Oh dear. I've already exhausted a minute and a half. So I'll keep this extremely brisk, and you have somebody very distinguished following me as well. So I don't have very much to say apart from my own journey. But this is what I tend to do. How many of you here like to doodle, like to daydream? How many of you actually sit with your notebooks and keep doing tic-tac-toe or writing your own name in different fonts? Right? All of us do. In fact, when I was in college, the thing I liked the most was to write my name in different ways. I thought I might actually getting to name, signboard, and management and design. All of us do this. How many of you pass chit notes in class to your friends? You can tell the truth here. Okay, I actually did that. You guys don't have to do that anymore because you have Twitter. Okay, we didn't have all of that 20 years ago or whenever, right? So the only way was to do is to pass chit notes. But believe me, I know this gets taken as a bad thing, but I think all of this is what has made me do what I do, right? One of the main lessons I've learned as a musician you're an entrepreneur all the time because your product is your talent, is what you do. Your market is ever expanding, hopefully, not decreasing. And looking at the transformative power I've had today, clearly the market is there. And you have to use every resource that you can. You have to use every single little paisa that you earn to keep promoting yourself, to keep pushing yourself. And it's not easy. So by qualification of taking risk and by qualification of doing something which is very difficult and very unconventional to do, every musician is an entrepreneur in their own way. And so I'm just going to share a little bit about, my handbook, what has worked for me, what has not. So the first question I ask myself is, because even I used to like writing chits in class and I never paid much attention, right? My hairstyle would suggest that I'm actually very intelligent and I know a lot of stuff. Actually, I don't. Most of it came from pulling my hair because I never understood probability. Do you? Okay. So why be an entrepreneur instead of something else? And one of the questions that my parents have asked me at many points of time, you don't like to work for anybody because you're too headstrong, right? You don't like to report to anybody, which is true. The second one especially has been lazy, has been true at various points of time because I've been lazy. Right now I realize that as an entrepreneur, you work much, much, much harder than if you work for somebody else. Or is it because I keep obsessing on one thing? Is it because I'm unidimensional and I only keep thinking about music all the time? Honestly, I tell you something. This morning, for example, you all know this tune also. Which song is this? I'm hearing bis, 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 bis. What is it? Okay, you all know this. So this morning, this is one of the things I keep doing. I'm very unidimensional. When I get up in the morning, I walk over to the keys and I'm like people like to doodle and like people like to sketch with a pencil. I'll start with a tune and I'll keep making variations. So this is what I do. Keep doodling like that. I am quite unidimensional that way. I keep obsessing about music. I think about music 24 hours a day. 365 days a year. My wife is already very bored of me. This is the only thing I talk about, right? And it doesn't matter where the tune can come from. Sometimes a tune can come to me from a car reversing alarm, right? How many of us have heard, this car is backing up, right? You hear tunes in elevators. Of course, in today's day and age, you keep hearing tunes on cell phones quite a bit. So it's always mixing in my head in one way or the other. One of the great experiences I've had on this unidimensionality and knowing that I'm not the only crazy person I know, is when I was sitting in Mr. A.R. Rahman in Bombay airport, and quite by chance, we're both in the waiting lounge, and he usually carries like 3 devices with himself. I go and sit next to him and he says, I want you to listen to something and tell me what you think, and he just puts earphones on. And in the airport, in the lounge, he's taken the airport music that keeps playing in the airport lounge. He's taken that and mixed that with a beat from Argentina and the singing of a set of Buddhist monks. There's a set of Buddhist monks in Argentina called Les Monjes Budistas. He's taken their singing, their chanting, the airport music, and a set of beats, and he's mixed it on the spot in the airport lounge. And he's playing it to me, and he said, okay, can you play a couple of more patterns, and let's add to this. So I'm sitting on his iPad, and he's got a piano app, and I'm playing on that, and we are mixing a song in the airport lounge before the flight is called. And this is how obsessive people get, right? Very quietly, 3 devices, and as soon as the flight is called, and this is what is great about technology, right? That 3 devices immediately come inside one bag, and he's put it into his hand baggage, and we're off to the flight. And this is so wonderful what you can do with music nowadays. I'm glad in a way that I've been unidimensional, but all these reasons are true. I think what I've always been saying is that I've been obsessive. I've been obsessive about music right from the time that I was in school. I've been obsessive about the fact that this is all I want to do. Unfortunately, life doesn't always allow you to do that. You end up doing all kinds of other things. 3 years ago, I walked into a corporation school in Tirvarur. Tirvarur is near Tanjavur, for those who know or don't know. And in Tirvarur, in this corporation school, Tirvarur is a very important place in South Indian classical music because that's where the trinity of Carnatic music were born. The trinity, just so you know, is Tyagaraja, Muthuswami Dikshitar, and Shama Shastri. And I asked this group of 7th standard children, I said, do you know who the trinity is? And a boy got up and said, Namita, Nayantara, and Shreya Saran. That kind of transformed in me a little bit the fact that a place like Tirvarur, which is the birthplace of classical music, it's so sad that children don't know their own heritage, and that made me get the second dream. That's why I've said 2 dreams. The second dream was we should take our music, we should take our classical traditions, and we should take what we already have and inherited, structure it in a way that children can understand it and children can appreciate it, not because they have to learn music, but because they need to understand what music can do to make you a very interesting person as part of the classroom, and that's what they said in terms of the introduction. So it's actually not 75,000 children. As of yesterday, it's 90,000 children just in Tamil Nadu who are now impacted by this, which has been the second of my obsessions, right? But of course, as an entrepreneur, of course, as doing something very unconventional, I sit and play the piano, which is not very well known. In fact, the maid who works in our house still calls it the veena, right? It's an instrument that's not very known. Whenever I travel with this, people usually ask me, Sir, films la neenga vaasipingla? That's the first question I get asked. It's very difficult to be an independent musician, right, unless you have an affiliation. What scares me, and therefore I want to tell you this, I'm sure the speakers after me will tell you this as well, what frightens me usually is what if I don't get known? What if I am anonymous? What if at the end of my life, after doing all the work that I do, nobody knows what I've done, nobody even listens to what I do? What if I don't have a market at all? And it is at times like that that my obsession and the compulsion to keep sticking to what I believe in the most, which is the music itself, keeps taking over. What scares me is not having impact, and that's the only thing that drives me on a day-to-day basis. It's the music itself and the impact that hopefully you can create on people. Sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't happen, but it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be terrified. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to get those middle of the night panics. That's not me, is it? Okay. It's okay to be terrified. What inspires me is the same set of things. And that's what is cool about this whole thing. The alignment comes because what scares me is what inspires me. Hopefully that I can have an impact. Hopefully that there is a certain difference, a certain contribution that as a musician you can make to the community. I'll give you an example. You all know this tune. If you don't know it, shame on you. Okay? However, this was composed about 300 years ago, right? It's very cool. You can go home and tell your parents that there was an uncle who came and he played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star to us. Anyway, there's a little boy of 12 years old, okay, who composed this almost 300 years ago. He didn't compose just the tune and not just this version of the tune, but not less than 32 variations on this tune in a space of 1 hour and 47 minutes. This is the first tune. The second variation is third variation. I can play all 32, but then I'll run out of time, okay? Can you imagine that a boy, blindfolded, sat down in a room without a piano and came up not only with a tune that we all remember 300 years later, at least 5,000 miles away, but also 32 variations of this at the age of 12, and that's genius, and that's obsession, and that's passion, and that's craziness and madness, and that's everything that I live for. That boy, does anybody know what that boy's name was? Mozart, right? Mozart came up with this when he was 12, and he was blindfolded, and he did it all because he would get a treat. He would get something like an ice cream at the end of it. Somebody challenged him and said, if you can do this, then we'll give you some custard or something like that, and this is what he did, right? And we remember it so far away, and this is what continues to inspire me. Do you know what this particular tune is? Okay, who composed it? You all know Happy Birthday. You all know it because you've all sung it at some point, usually very badly, right? Because we usually end up singing it in class, in school, because our teachers tell us to, and nobody really wants to sing it because we hate that guy, right? But we still sing it, Happy Birthday. So, question is, do you know who composed it, right? Nobody knows. And yet, if you think of it, for those of you who are programmers or who are in IT and things like that, this is a piece of program code that's been written 250 years ago by a set of twin sisters called the Hill Sisters in the US. Nobody even knows who they are. But what a fantastic tune. It's actually known by virtually every person on the planet, right? Great music does have a great impact on the way we live, okay? Great music registers. Nobody remembers some record that you submitted for, one of your classes, right? Hopefully nobody wants to remember the exams that you all wrote, right? But a tune lives forever. This is, if you've seen what Steve Jobs says, and this is part of what he says, if you can figure out a way to touch a person's heart, you will stay with them forever. And music does that so very easily, especially well-constructed music, right? And step number 4, step number 5, step number 6, and actually up to step number 1000 is failing, right? There are lots and lots of times as an entrepreneur, as a musician, that I'm constantly reminded of how terrible I can be. There are lots of things that I don't want to remember. And that's another great thing that, if at all I can give you any inspiration in whatever journeys you take forward, don't be afraid to fail, okay? Whatever you're scared about, let this not be one of the things you're scared about. Please do not be afraid of failing, right? let me tell you, it takes a lot of courage to stand in front of college students. I'm sure the other speakers will agree as well. Because you have a lot of dreams, you have a lot of inspiration, you have a lot of aspiration, right? It is very hard to stand up and say that I have failed, but I can tell you this, I have failed and failed and failed and failed. I continue to fail, right? Thankfully, in today's day and age, we have things like Facebook, so if you fail, you can always go and crib about it and get 125 likes. The one thing I've understood, very little that I have understood, is that you become an entrepreneur, you become successful at being an entrepreneur, first and foremost if you start understanding people. People are meant to be put into your life in order to make your life more difficult for you. Please understand that, okay? It is a challenge and therefore it is a learning. If you understand how to work with people and how to get the best out of people, right, you're already on your way. The second thing, which especially in our country we seem to fail a lot, somebody just made fun of Rahul Gandhi on this, right, is that we fail to understand process, right? We build great individuals, we build great Sachin Tendulkars, but we build very, very few great institutions. We build very few great businesses that perpetuate beyond a point of time. The greatest businesses seem to be businesses that seem to have been set up abroad, right? And which have branches here. What is it that we need to do in order to understand process? And understanding what mixes and what doesn't mix. So for example, right, is a song that seems to have captured your generation very much. Imagine if I try to mix, supposing I can mix a couple of songs, right? So supposing, why don't I actually have a couple of suggestions from you? Tell me 2 songs you want to hear. It can be anything, it can be Tamil, Hindi, whatever, as long as I know it. Lungi dance is not permitted. Okay? I refuse to. Okay? Just give me 2 suggestions. I'll just show you something. Give me 3 suggestions. I'll show you sometimes some things that mix and some things that don't mix. Okay? Yes? I'm running out of time. They'll shut me off. Nee Partha Parve. Okay. 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 So you've given me 3 good examples. Okay. I'll show you 2 which actually can combine very well. Can mix very beautifully, very easily. That's great that you gave me these 2 suggestions. But if I do, if I mix that with, it sounds almost like taking macaroni and tair sadam and putting it together. Okay? Another great lesson that comes out of music, you sometimes kind of instinctively know some people that mix and some people that don't, things that can mix and things that don't. I'm actually down to almost 5 seconds. If you got something out of it, please be obsessive about what you believe in. Don't be afraid to daydream. Do not be afraid if you're doodling. Please remember Steve Jobs did that at some point as well. So did I. He's far more successful. And remember, it's perfectly okay to fail. Do not be scared of failing, right? And I'm just going to leave you with a few things. It's okay to beat yourself up once in a while. Don't keep tweeting about it, okay? It's okay to stop believing once in a while.